Let's talk about The Crow, the 2024 reboot. I say reboot loosely, as this is a series where every movie has really been its own standalone movie, with its own set of cast and characters and everything. The only thing that makes this a reboot or remake is the two main characters share the two names of the original two leads from the 1994 movie. For reference, there are 5 Crow movies, 3 that went to theatrical release, and 2 that were direct to video. So, where does this movie stand compared to the other Crow movies? Well, to answer that, I think we need to look at The Crow as a franchise itself, and be honest with ourselves. The Crow is an iconic character, but are the movies really iconic? When anyone talks about The Crow, the two things that anyone really thinks of are the iconic look of the Crow himself, the white face paint, the black eye shadow, and the second thing everyone talks about, of course, is that Brandon Lee, the actor who played the original Crow, died during filming of the first movie. However, very little beyond that is ever mentioned about the Crow movies themselves. Things like plot points or quotable lines are pretty much forgotten about with these movies. This is not me saying that the original Crow movie didn't do anything special. It definitely did. At the time it came out, it presented a much grittier and dark comic book movie, complete with an R rating. Remember, when it came out, an example of other gritty and dark comic book movies would have been Tim Burton's Batman. So, for its time, The Crow was a breath of fresh air. Not for its characters or plot, just for its darker superhero take. Well, in today's day and age, we have an abundance of superhero movies, some with a much darker undertones, and some that are just bubbly and fun. You have range, whatever you want, you can find it, to the point where it gets almost nauseous. So let's be honest with ourselves. As a franchise built on very little behind it, with a waning fan base, and nothing to set it apart from any of the other films that are coming out nowadays, did anyone expect this movie to be anything but okay, average? That's pretty much how I felt when I left The Crow. It was a movie. It had some great action moments, but as a whole, it's nothing more than an average movie. Nothing horrible, but nothing special either. Honestly, this movie is just missing something, and I just can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe it's an X factor, or maybe it's just average. So let's get into the meat of this movie. The movie centers around Eric, played by Bill Skarsgård, and Shelby, played by FKA Twigs, who are both addicts that met in a prison rehab facility. I think both of these actors did a great job with what they were given, and I really do like Skarsgård as the Crow. However, there isn't much for their characters themselves, and the best way to describe them is they are loners, druggies, and they're young. Honestly, the start of their romance will give you Joker and Harley Quinn vibes. Shelby has a dark past, and that past will lead the romance, like all other romances in The Crow, to a tragic death. But you knew that coming into this, as that's the origin required for The Crow to be created. This romance will take up the majority of the first act, and honestly felt like it needed to be trimmed down a good amount. It is through Shelby's past that we are introduced to the villain of our movie. And without spoiling him, I did very much enjoy the main villain, and all the new storytelling they could do with him. But even then, the villain himself, just like everything in this movie, fails to feel very fleshed out. A lot of this movie feels very surface level. The characters aren't very deep, and the movie does a good job at hiding that with a lot of very cinematic shots. The afterlife set piece is a prime example of some truly great shots, and the movie does do a very good job with that. While I do have issues with the depth of this movie, I do have to say the final act of this movie is absolutely epic, with a complete balls to the wall fight scene that makes sure to earn this movie's R rating. I feel like if more of the movie had elements of this final act, this movie would have been a lot better. Basically, this movie takes way too long to get to The Crow, which is the strength of this movie. As you can probably tell, I pretty much just summed up the plot of this movie at the very end of this video. And it was not long. And that's not because I'm trying to shy away from too many spoilers. It's because mainly there just isn't that much to say about the movie itself. It's a movie that has good actors, great action, great cinematic shots, but the story, just like all the other Crow movies, is weak. So, this movie succeeds at being a good Crow movie, possibly a great Crow movie. But as a movie itself, this movie is a 2.0 out of 4. The last act of this movie is a 3.0, and had the movie trimmed down the runtime or focused a little more on the Crow itself, it could have easily been a 2.5 or a 3.0. But as it stands, it's one amazing act of a movie, but you have to watch two average at best acts first to get there.